Welcome everybody to today's webinar, Unlocking the Power of Internal Mobility. We have a very exciting discussion planned for you today, all things about internal mobility. Before we get started though, I just want to remind everybody about a couple of quick things. So first of all, this webinar is being recorded and being live streamed on LinkedIn. So if you can't make it to the end of the webinar, or if you'd like to share it with one of your colleagues, you'll be receiving a link to the recording tomorrow. Those of you who registered on LinkedIn as well, you will also be receiving a link. So check out your LinkedIn messages as well. Second of all, we do have some polls scheduled for today. So we really strongly encourage you guys to vote in those polls so that we're going to sort of discuss the outcomes of those polls with some of the questions we've got planned as well. So your involvement is much appreciated. And last but not least, there is time for a Q&A session at the end of today's webinar. So if you have panelists, have questions for our panelists, you can fire them in the Q&A box below. You can do that throughout the webinar, or you can do it towards the end as we get closer to that final slot for Q&A, which is about 5-10 minutes before we finish the actual planned discussion. So now that I got those quick housekeeping things out of the way, I might start by introducing our panelists. So I'm going to start with you, Nick. So can you give us a quick introduction about yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Nick. I'm head of customer success here at DevSkiller. Been in the customer success area for the last 5 years, working with customers around technical assessments and skills management for the last so 5 years. Many discussions with customers regarding skills management, internal mobility, technical hiring, all of these areas. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, looking forward to hearing your insights. And Kuba or Jakub, can you give us a quick intro about yourself, please?
Yeah, so I'm a founder at DevSkiller, and I for the last couple of years I work with customers mostly on introducing the skills management and internal mobility programs. So yeah, I'm also happy to share my experience here as well.
Yeah, as I said, we do have a lot planned for today. We've got a few different things we're going to cover, starting obviously with the rise of importance with internal mobility. We're also going to discuss some challenges and strategies for implementing internal mobility programs. And then we're going to shift the discussion a little bit towards technology and the impact that technology has on internal mobility, on things like continuous learning and development, upskilling and reskilling as we get towards the end. And as I mentioned at the top, there will be Q&A about anything we discussed today or something that you'd like to find out as well from either of our panelists. You can fire them in there as well. So now that all of those introductions are out of the way, I will start us off by launching our first poll. And this is just a sort of introductory poll here, which should appear on your screen now. And this question is describing your organization's approach to internal mobility. So the question is, how would you describe your organization's current approach to internal mobility? We've got a few responses here. So highly proactive, we have a well-defined internal mobility program. Moderately proactive, we support internal mobility, but do not have formalized policies. Reactive, in that we occasionally facilitate internal moves when the need arises. Non-existent or unsure if you're just here to learn a little bit more about internal mobility. There's also the option for you there as well. And I can see that there are more of you in the webinar right now that have voted. So please jump over to the webinar and vote for us. And then I'll end the poll and share the results. And then we'll dive into our first question. So I will do that now. Thank you for just joining. So I can see that more of you are slowly coming in. So thank you for that. I'll end the poll and share the results. So in response to the question, how would you describe your organization's current approach to internal mobility? 50% of you said moderately proactive. We support internal mobility, but do not have formalized policies or programs in place. We also got some votes for reactive and non-existent as well. So I'll stop sharing that and end the poll there. And thank you for the responses. We just wanted to get a little bit of an understanding about where everybody is with as it comes to an internal mobility processes, so that we can kind of structure our conversation accordingly around that. So I will lead us into our first question, which is for you, Nick, actually, which is talking about the increased importance of internal mobility. So the question here is, how do you define internal mobility within an organization, and why is it becoming increasingly important in today's business environment?
Yeah, so basically any mobility within an organization can be considered internal mobility. This could be anything from starting over in a new, more junior role to moving laterally across similar seniority roles, but with different job responsibilities, to moving vertical. So in a promotional context, right? Internal mobility is becoming more important due to the speed of technological evolution, right? So skills are becoming relevant and subsequently irrelevant faster than ever. As lower skilled roles become more and more automated, the necessity to retain these employees with good culture fit will become more apparent, and upskilling and reskilling will become more prevalent, right? So we have customers who have moved employees from IT support into DevOps roles after the company learned that these people were acquiring these skills outside of work on their own free time. So being able to identify these people who are acquiring skills outside of their normal work hours will be important for companies, right? These people have good culture fit. You want to keep these people on. So yeah, this is what I would say on this.
Yeah. There's a couple of other things there in what you mentioned about the skill life cycle was one of the most important things I think you could say with the speed in which skills are becoming obsolete. I think there was the report from Deloitte. I think Forbes mentioned it as well, which is the skill half-life is at something like 2.5 years now for certain skills. So the pace at which skills are developing and changing, I think, is probably one of the key reasons we need to the companies need to implement these internal mobility programs, right?
Yeah, and I believe skill acquisition will increase with AI and stuff like this as well. So yeah, definitely.
Yep. Okay, thank you. I want to shift the conversation a little bit towards misconceptions. Kuba, and this question's here for you. So what are some common misconceptions about internal mobility, and how can these be addressed?
I was thinking about what we should mention because there are many misconceptions, but I believe that the two most common ones that I see is that first is companies often believe that they need to plan particular movements in their internal mobility. So it's not like, an agile process, but it's okay. Let's right now think about how to move our whole entire department of A to the whole department of B. And it doesn't mean that you need to do that. That there are situations where when it makes sense, when you're a production company or closing a production line, then of course you need to like move all people internally. But as Nick mentioned about the AI and the evolution of the skills, it really need to be dynamic. So the first misconception is that we need a process that allows people to move inside the organization, not to design the whole career paths based on the internal mobility. So I would say that basically internal mobility is often about moving people into non-obvious positions. So when you have a software engineer and you are moving this person to a software architect, it can be considered due to some formal requirements as internal mobility. But as Nick mentioned, most moving people from customer support to DevOps, or from office management to data analysis, that's more like an internal mobility, and that's something that is really related to the to individuals rather than the job position. So that's the first thing. The second misconception is that companies, when trying to do the internal mobility, they focus on the job position skills. So the skills that I have due to my current role in the company. But then it's hard to think about the individuals, because why someone from the customer success or support is able to move to DevOps team. It's not because of their job as customer support specialists. It's because their passion, interest, and what they do after hours. So when thinking about empowering internal mobility, you really need to see the employees as a whole person, not just from the perspective of the job position skills. So that's the second misconception. The third one is that people often believe that the internal mobility must be permanent and must be from role to role, etc. Well, it's not. It's okay if I will join some project in different department just to see if I like it, to share my skills, etc. And as a step towards skills-based organization, because the idea of the skills-based organization, let's do the job based on the skills, not on the roles. If you need to build a report, then you don't need to necessarily look for the senior reporting specialist for like if he or she is busy, then there won't be any report. You are just looking for the people with particular skill set that allows them to do or build this report. So that's the third misconception, right? Instead of like focusing on the whole permanent movement from A to B, think about like having an agile workforce where people really can move like as on the climbing wall. You are not forced to move up in the same, like, or you can go like, down maybe, left, right, and like play with that. And that's the goal. I believe that's the most important. So the biggest misconception to sum up is that it's not something that you can plan from A to B and like, repeat for the same, for different people, the same path.
Yeah. I think there's two things there. The analogy is the climbing wall versus the ladder, where the climbing wall you can go in any which direction, up, down, sideways, whereas a ladder is like basically only going up. And the other point about this skills-based organization, I think it's another to add on top of that is where we're seeing certain areas, particularly in tech, where certain positions or roles don't even exist yet. So not only talking about the skills, we're talking about stuff like with automated cars or the manufacturing industry where these roles don't even actually exist. So you have to apply skills to these sorts of things and sort of fill the gaps with the skills that are existing already and develop the things that are needed to even sort of match the sort of requirements that are needed. So this is an interesting topic that we actually write about. I think there's an article on our blog about this as well, where we're talking about completely new areas that haven't even existed before. In order to do this, you kind of need to be creative in the way that you move and shuffle your workforce around that to be able to fill the jobs that are needed. So very interesting points. So thanks for sharing those there, Kuba. I'll bring it back to you, Nick, here. We're going to shift gears towards challenges now. So the question here is, what principal challenges do organizations face when integrating technology into their internal mobility programs?
So probably one of the biggest challenges would be general resistance to change, right? You need engagement from the employees. You need engagement from managers to integrate any technology into internal mobility programs, because they're across the organization, right? If you don't have this involvement from the employees to either match themselves with jobs or promote themselves toward jobs, or managers to allow the employees to move within from their team, right? You don't want to lose a key team member, but if the person is passionate about something else, maybe you have to let them move to this other position, right? Or at least try. This is one of the biggest challenges, I would say. This can be overcome by good change management, right? So if you get the managers to adopt and the more senior employees to adopt, this will filter down to the other employees, and then they will be engaged as well. The other challenge would be determining what kind of information flow should come from their current technology tool set, from these other tools into the technology you're using for internal mobility, right? You'll need to do a lot of integrations, find which data you want to move, where it should go, all of these things, right? There's a lot of operational things that go on there, right? Other challenges probably would be those are the two biggest, I would say. Yeah, and finding the right tools for these kind of things as well. Something that works for everyone and like I said, engages the employees, right? If they feel like they're gaining something from this, so it helps them in their career, then they'll be more likely to use it and more likely to engage, right?
Yeah. We're actually going to bring the topic about change management from a leadership perspective a little bit further in this conversation. But that's, I think, one of the most important points here when we talk about change management. It needs to really come from the top down. I mean, top down and bottom up. I think we've talked about this on previous webinars before. But there's actually statistic here, because I was looking up some stuff prior to this webinar from McKinsey. Organizations with engaged leaders in transformation-specific roles are 1.6 times more likely to achieve successful digital transformation. And there's a plethora of statistics out there that prove basically that successful change management processes have to come from the top down. Otherwise, basically, it's going to be pretty much, you're setting yourself up for failure. So this is something I think really important to consider when we're talking about these internal mobility programs, and the overall transformation process really has to be a top-down approach. We do have a little bit more on this later in the discussion, but I think it's important to point out there. So thank you for those insights there, Nick. Now we are moving along quite nicely.
Add one more thing to the challenges, because I believe that second challenge that is often like, ignored by the companies is like the salary changes. Because often when people are like, moving from department A to department B, it's like, usually it's about the rise in their salary, right? So that's the problem, because there are some managers who are complaining about them internal mobility, that everyone is basically like, trying to escape their department because they can then earn more money in the different areas of the company, which is pretty common, for example, for customer support departments, right? Or like, any office management department, when like basically if you gain some especially internal knowledge, and people in the customer support department, they really know the tools or the product of the company, like it's deep understanding and deep knowledge. They are very useful in different departments, like for example in sales, when you have someone who is like, extremely good at the product, then this person is more likely to sell these products. They are moving to sales, where of course sales people can earn more than customer support. So that's the problem, and that's where, as Nick mentioned, you need to have very mature managers that say, okay, basically I'm not losing these people, I'm a source of like high quality employees for the rest of the organization. So I'm like a father or mother who is like, just producing these people or developing them. But that's the problem, when people are often moving from the crucial departments to others, just based on the salary, and of course because they believe that they will be doing more interesting more creative things in their department. But that's something that really is good to align that in the process. And for example, what I learned when talking to our customers, they're often treating internal mobility in the same way as going to a different company. So they say, okay, you have a notice period that is, let's say, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and it applies also to the internal mobility. So you can move earlier if you can agree with your manager and the manager that you're moving to. But if not, then your current manager cannot like hold you for more than he will be allowed when you will be going to work for a competitor. And of course, it's better to allow great employees stay with us rather than move to the competitor because they are blocked from the internal mobility perspective. But yeah, that's something that we really need to consider.
I thought of another challenge is also trying to achieve perfection when you first introduce some technology, right? So you need to work towards better rather than perfect. So it has to be some kind of iterative process where you improve rather than thinking that you're going to go straight from where you're at now to where you would really like to be. The ideal situation,
exactly.
right?
Especially that there are no like copy paste solutions that you can like apply from one company who succeeded to the other, because it's all about the culture. I know that we'll talk about the culture in the next one, but you cannot copy paste culture from one company to the other, right? So yeah, exactly. You need to really implement something, adopt it, use, and then like improve, like with the agile approach, like do retrospective, etc.
Yep. Very much an agile process. Thank you both for the insights there. We are going to move the conversation a little bit now in the direction of more in the direction of technology. We're also going to touch on continuous learning and some more back there, like Kuba mentioned there. But what I will do is launch our second of 3 polls planned for today. Unfortunately, if you're joining us on LinkedIn, you cannot vote on this one, but you can still see the poll and think to yourself what you would vote for. So the question is, what currently holds greater influence in decision-making for internal mobility within your organization? We have a few responses here. Human insight decisions are primarily driven by managerial judgment and personal interactions. Technology-driven decisions are heavily influenced by data analytics, AI recommendations, or automated systems. Balanced approach, we utilize a mix of human insight and technology-driven methods in a balanced manner, or other, if none of those there match your current process. And this is going to open up some questions here about finding the right mix between technology and human insight. And also we're going to go a little bit further into how technology can be applied in internal mobility and into things like upskilling and reskilling and continuous learning and development. So thank you for voting, everybody who has here. But I can still see it's only about half of you. So if you're if you're listening on another screen, jump back over and drop a vote for us. Otherwise, I will end the poll in just a moment. No more coming through. So I'll end the poll and share the results on your screen. So what currently holds greater influence in decision-making for internal mobility within your organization? 60% of you voted human insight. Decisions are primarily driven by managerial judgment and personal interactions. 30% for technology driven and 10% for a balanced approach. But very interesting there that yeah, more than half of you still believe in human insight as the driving factor for this area here. And that does bring us to our next question, which is for you, Nick, talking about the balance between human insights and technologies. The question is, how do you see the balance between human insight and technology-driven decision-making evolving in internal mobility practices?
Yeah, so I would say it's evolving more towards integration, right? You'll get more analytics on the individuals. So what kind of skills they're acquiring, what kind of work they're doing, everything will be integrated. And managers will be able to make better decisions on which employees to promote. So I've spoken with customers before and companies that the general process for, say, a software developer to be promoted is that person's manager goes to a group of managers and has to tell them why this person should be promoted. And if that manager isn't good at selling this employee's skills, then they won't be promoted, right? And from this discussion I had with this is one of the group managers, he said that when he spoke with the other people of this in this team, they said this person's amazing, he's great. But the manager wasn't good at selling the person, so he doesn't get promoted, right? So this kind of thing can be somewhat removed by adding more data around these employees, right? So you'll have more data involved, human insights as well, so that won't go away. You'll still have to have some insights, right? So this is what I would say. Adopting new technology in this area will help streamlining this kind of environment where it's wholly human centric, which is what the poll shows, right? So yep. So this is I would say it's not an ideal situation where it's only human insights, right? People can be biased. With technology you can remove these bias, right? Or at least somewhat reduce these bias. They can't go away entirely, but you can remove them to a degree.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say bias, because I think like with bias, there can be bias on either side of the technology and on the human side. So I think having technology to check human created bias is important. You can also have humans to check technology created bias, because if you're feeding an algorithm the same data, it's going to spit out basically something that's probably skewed a particular way. So it's very important that you have a human on the other side of that, verifying that and adding context to what it is. By the same token, humans become inherently with our own biases. So that's why technology and data is there to sort of help us eliminate that as well. So finding the right balance there is, I think, very much the way forward. We see it as well with the wider adoption of technology within HR departments, and striking that balance between technology and human interaction. Kubra, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything on this point, or should we move forward?
Like the only thing that is, I believe, important here is that when we are talking about these not obvious movements, the problem is that your manager in, I don't know, customer support may not be like, may have zero ideas about the DevOps stuff, etc. So how he or she is able to support you in this kind of internal mobility, right? So the problem often is that when it's about like individual insights or manager insights, then it's limited to this, like the scope of the knowledge of this manager. That's the first problem. The second problem is that there are not a lot of managers that really can support you with your movement into the different areas, or based on their expertise, see that, okay, when I look at you, I believe that you are more useful for department B. Because how this person should know if you are useful for department B. Like sometimes there are mature managers who are saying, I believe that your attitude, your approach, your competencies are making you a great salesperson. But it's usually because this manager worked for sales some time ago and he knows what's important. So yeah, I would say that the problem with internal mobility that is like, let's say, driven by the human insights, and that's the problem. When you have big company, then there is no way that like sales manager will know each of 10,000 different employees and will be able to find someone in this pool. Like that's the problem. In sports, when you're looking for the players, you have scouts that are going to all of the matches for kids that are 8-year-old, and they're looking for the brilliant players that they can invite for the tests in their home club. But in the company, there are no such institutes like scouts that can find these brilliant employees that they should move. If the manager is good, then it's great. But the question is if someone other will trust the manager, etc. So that's a tricky part with the human approach. Like it's not something that you can quantify, right, or measure.
Yeah. And a follow-up question is, this one's just off the cuff. If we're trying to liken the scout analogy to how this could be replicated inside a company, like an assessment of employees, like what would you recommend here if we're looking about trying to find particular employees that might have this certain skill set that would match to a different role in a different department? Do you have any suggestions here?
Yeah, so as I said, like the something that the tool should allow you is to map the skills of individuals, not only from the perspective of the job position. So if I'm a Java developer, then you can guess that I know how to code Java, because otherwise I won't be hired as a Java developer for this company. But what you don't know about me is that, for example, I'm good at Photoshop, because how
It's a
Photoshop is
hobby.
connected with Java development. But I know this one. So if you need a new, photo for the marketing department, I'm the person to reach out to. And how do you know that? Like my manager, maybe he knows that I'm doing photos, but maybe not. If I have a tool or any other registry where I can add this information, then we are building something that is close to the skills-based organizations. If you're looking for someone to take photos of the board, then you can reach out to me because I can do that, right? It's not related to my Java developer position, but it's related to my skills. So we are building a skills-based organization. I don't care about your position. I care what you know.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move along here. Diving a little bit deeper into the topic of emerging technology here. And I'll stay with you, Kuba. So the question here is, how are emerging technologies like AI transforming internal mobility strategies within organizations?
So I believe it's something that I can piggyback the last answer that I gave, because with the technology, if you have a technology that is really scalable and you can implement it in the whole company, then it allows you to do two, I believe, very important things. First is that with such an approach is much easier to track all of the skills and track all of the skills that are needed for different departments and check the fit of individuals to every single role that exists, right? That's what we, for example, do at DevSkiller. We get every single employee. We look at all of the skills that this person added to our software, and then we check a fit for this person based on all of the skills they have to any single job position that you have in the company. So like for bigger companies, we have 200 or 300 job positions, and we check every employee fit to this job position. If we have 10,000 people and we have 300 job positions, that's a lot of stuff to check, right? Because then we are talking about the 3 million fits to the job position. That's something that you cannot do without technology, right? But based on that, we can really craft individual movements inside the companies. The second thing that is important is that due to all of the changes that are happening right now in the digital area, the technology is so fast, the half-life is so short, that it's really hard to stay on the line, right? To adapt to this line. So what basically company needs is to have some kind of a tool, strategy, or a solution to optimize this whole mobility across the whole company.
Mhm.
Why? Because it's possible that I have, like, let's say we have Nick, you and me, right?
Mhm.
And Nick wants to move to some position, let's say in the SEO. Nick wants to, like, work with the SEO, and his fit to SEO is, let's say, 70%. So he need to acquire 30% of the skills to become an SEO expert. Let's say that you, Justin, also want to move to some other department, let's say to the finance stuff. And your fit to the finance is, let's say, 80%, right? But your fit to SEO is as well 80%. So now let's check what's Nick's fit to some other position, right? And let's say it's 90%. So it makes sense to reorganize this movement, and let's say move you to SEO, Nick to your position, and me to finance, because from the company perspective, it will be much more effective and much cheaper in terms of the number of skills that we need to acquire. Also, if we have 10 people that wants to move, let's say, okay, real world scenario, sorry. We are moving to the cloud as a company, right? So it doesn't mean that we have nothing right now and we'll have a cloud in the future. No, we have a lot of on-prem services, servers that we are managing, maintaining, etc. And we want to move from on-prem to cloud. So what happens with all of the people that we have right now hired as a network administrator, system administrator, etc.? They want to move to DevOps, but not all of them. We need 3 DevOps people, and we have 10 right now. So then we need to also optimize where should we move these people, right? And it's not necessarily that we'll move 3 best to DevOps and then some other to different department. It's possible that we'll move some junior developer to DevOps, and we will convert the network administrator to junior developer, right? So 2 movements instead of 1, but it can be much cheaper and much more effective from the company perspective. And last but not least, especially right now when there are new technologies, maybe not entering the market because they're already in the market, but entering the mainstream, right? So the companies who are, let's say, a little bit behind the line, they say, okay, we need to build a new department for machine learning, for AI, whatever. And they're trying to build it like purely from the internal people. And that's usually wrong, because if we'll say, okay, let's build a new, I don't know, real estate department at DevSkiller, like, why not, right? Building it totally based on our employees have 0 experience in the field, even if we have skills, it's a wrong decision. Like, what we should do is to hire someone who is really experienced in this area, set this person as a core for this team, and then like build 90% of these competencies that we need for this team from the internal mobility. But still, we have some root that is able to, like, craft this whole department. And also with the tool, you can track not only skills, but you can also track the experience of the people, right? Projects they participated on, their work experience, history, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you can see,
Learning.
okay, so let's move this person to this department, not because the fit is great, but because this person has an experience here, right?
Yeah.
So, the question is if it's better, for example, to build an agile department from agile people who never managed any single project, or from experienced project managers that used to work in the waterfall, but they are eager to learn about the agile. I would say that you need to combine both. You need experience and you need this fresh blood from people who really want to do, but they have no experience. Like, they will be forced with budgeting, and they say, yeah, I learned about the budgeting, but I don't know how to fight for a budget inside the whole organization. And these waterfall people, they know that. Like, they're just not agile. Maybe they are not agile. Maybe they know agile, but they're not doing agile. Maybe the opposite, they are doing agile, but they don't know Scrum, etc. So that's something that is really like a game changer from the technological perspective, that you can consider all of these factors when planning how you should move people across the whole organization and really optimize it to find the maximum, not only local maximum for my team.
Yep, yep, yep. I think one of the most important things there that you forgot to mention when you're talking about tracking things within the tool itself is learning as well, because if you're talking about having the sort of core expert is providing the knowledge and experience, but you also have people who are upskilling themselves or learning themselves. This is something that needs to be, that can be set and tracked and all of that sort of stuff, obviously within our tool, but other tools out there as well. So thank you very much for those insights there, Kuba. We're going to stay with technology, and I'm going to bring it back to you, Nick, but we're going to talk about technology for the perspective of continuous learning. The question here is, what are some effective strategies for using technology to foster a culture of continuous learning and development that supports internal mobility?
Yeah, so essentially, a lot of companies are doing learning and development programs, and it's hard to track where this learning goes. So what skills are actually acquired, how much of it is used and useful, right? So finding something that will allow you to track the skill development and align this skill development with the internal organization's goals. So what kind of skills need to be acquired for the organization, and also try to align with the interests of the employees that we spoke about before. So aligning these things, and also, the managers need to promote this culture of learning and development as well. So these are the main things. Something that will, allow mentors and mentees to connect. So if someone is able to, label themselves as willing to mentor something, right? So this is something that will be very helpful for an organization. So anything that can promote feedback within teams, right? Within teams, between employees, on their skill development, on their learning and development. Because if you get feedback and that says you're doing a great job, you're much more likely to keep trying to promote and do this job as well, right? So to work on these skills. So these are the main things I would say that are good strategies. So yeah.
Yep. Cool. But anything there, or can we move along?
No, just like a small comment on that, because what Nick mentioned about the mentees and mentors, it's crucial, because really, if you like, I was doing some trainings in my professional life from, like, I don't know, distributed systems or persistence in Java, and I learned like 80% of what I know right now after like or during the trainings, right? So you can be really an expert or consider yourself as an expert, and then you like have a mentee, and this person is starting to ask you very strange questions from, like, total different domains that what they are used to, and then you start learning, because like you need to prepare for these answers. And I know that from on the first trainings that I was doing, there was always like 1 or 2 questions per day that I have no idea how to answer them. So if you really need to or want to build an expertise inside your company, then boosting the internal trainings is a game changer here. Because when preparing a document, you really need to understand the mechanisms behind the technology, not only like, remember some facts that you are using all the time. You need to prepare for all the hard questions when someone is saying, okay, but why should we do it like this? And then you say, okay, I need to explain that. I need to understand that to be able to explain why A is better than B, right? So like then you really start learning.
Yeah, the practical application is very different to the theoretical knowledge you learn in the training, for sure. So very good point there. Yeah. So I'll stay with you, Kuba. We're gonna talk a little bit about organizational culture. We've already sort of touched on this a little bit earlier on in the discussion, but let's dig deeper into it now. And the question I have here is basically your thoughts on the importance of organizational culture in the successful adoption and execution of internal mobility strategies.
So I would say, or piggyback on what Nick was mentioning earlier. So like we need mature managers that will understand that, okay, my department is not my kingdom, it's part of the bigger kingdom that we need to, like, protect and develop, etc. So there is this model called one boat, that we are all on the one boat, right? So I really need to think about this one. So allowing people to move from my department to some other department is not my waste or my, like, you know, lose. It's about like helping them and helping the company to grow. And that's the first thing. The second thing is really thinking as an organization what I want to achieve with this internal mobility. So often the problem with internal mobility is that it's hard to say if I really want to move into this direction. Often it's like let's jump to this new team, new project, and let's see how it works, how it's like, if it's for me, etc. And there is often this salary issue. Okay, so right now I'm in the customer support and I earn X, right? Then I am going for a jump to DevOps team, and should I earn X or 2X's, like it's a standard for DevOps for 3 months? And there is no good solution. It's not like, yeah, you should use this or you should this, right? And it's all about the company culture, how we are selling that and how we are approaching that. So what's the benefit of moving from A to B? Is it salary or is it something else, right? Is it development opportunities, etc.? So it's all about that. And the next one is that really based on the first like, you know, poll that you executed, is that there are no companies that are really proactive in internal mobility. A lot of companies are saying, yeah, we support internal mobility, but then we ask them for the examples, and we realize that there is a company that has 20,000 employees, and they had 10 internal movements or lateral movements in the last year. So say, yeah, so sorry, that's not internal mobility. So I believe that with the culture, the biggest obstacle is like the managers and this one boat approach, that I really know that I'm not losing, I'm winning if my employees are going into other departments, and it's not poaching that we are doing. And like, you know, the word poaching is like a common word when we talk about the internal mobility. I believe we shouldn't treat it in that way. And that's the cultural thing, how you treat this one. If you're stealing employees from Nick, or if you're giving Nick's employees the chance to develop more because they already achieved everything that they were or they wanted in the Nick's department. So that's the first thing. And the second one is this proactiveness from the company.
Yeah.
So if I have a, like, you know, discussion with my, or like annual or semi-annual quarterly development discussions with my employees, if I'm proactively asking, okay, is there anything that you want to change, or you want to try, or you want to develop into, etc., that's important. When we are doing recruitment for DevSkiller, we often ask people where you see yourself in 3 years. And it's not like the question that I want to be an animal or a lion or whatever. It's more about in what direction do you want to develop. So right now you're an experienced project manager, but what's the direction that you want to go? Do you want to be a more experienced project manager, or you want to, you know, move into the development? And that's what you are joining us. And if there is some, like, you know, opportunity that this person wants to take, then we are often trying to give this opportunity as soon as possible. So it's okay. So like for 90% of your time, or 80 or 70, it depends on, like, you know, the different factors, you will be doing this project management. But for 1 hour per day, for 1 week per month, etc., whatever, you will be able to do this one, because that's something that we also need to address. And that's the culture. If you show people that you really care about their development, about their good feeling in terms of what they are doing, in if their personal development is aligned with the company development, because it doesn't mean that I will right now, like, you know, support I don't know, personal gym training for Nick, because like that's not aligned with my needs as a company, even if that what Nick is, like, you know, eager to do. Yeah, that's the goal, that I really want to find something that will be beneficial for Nick and for the company as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that a good way to summarize it is that the two need to go hand in hand, right? Like, so the culture creates the feeling within all the way down to the manager level. You talk about poaching, but from the flip side, it's also referred to as talent hoarding. Like, I'm not letting go of my best players, but if the culture exists within so it allows the manager to feel like this is the right thing to do, this is how the company thrives, this is how I thrive as a manager. Those two things can't be sort of like separate. They very much have to work hand in hand, right? So
yeah,
yeah,
CHRO of Orange said that it's everything all about creating a win-win strategy between the employee and the company. So you are winning, we are winning as a company, so everyone is happy, right? And that's the goal of the culture and internal mobility, reskilling, upskilling, you name it. Like it's all about like having the right skills in the right places in the company.
Yep. Funny you mentioned reskilling and upskilling. We have our second to last question here. And I will start actually with you, Nick, if that's okay. We're going to talk about reskilling and upskilling technology here. So the question is, what technology can be leveraged in reskilling and upskilling initiatives to support workforce development and internal mobility?
Well, there's obviously Talent Boost, our tool for skills mapping and reskilling and upskilling. That will allow companies to map the entire organization, identify these skills. But there are other tools as well for learning and development. There are a lot of good tools like Udemy, all of these. If you support the employees with this development opportunities and the possibility for learning, then a lot of them will use it as long as the culture is there for learning and development, right? So yeah, that's what I would say.
I'll bring it back to you, Kuba. Let's look at it more from a perspective of instead of what, maybe how technology can be leveraged, right? Because but I mean, Nick or Kuba, whoever wants to answer it, you can even touch on how our system works and how this can actually help with the internal mobility processes.
Yeah, so basically I would approach it from the different perspective maybe, because like when thinking about the tool, think about it's not like one time approach or one-time solution. It's not that I will buy a tool, I will use it today, and I will forget about it. So the most important thing, if you want to leverage the tool to do reskilling, upskilling, internal mobility, strategic workforce, workforce planning, etc., is about having a tool that is maintainable. So having a tool that will be up to date in 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, etc. So you really need to have something that will be always ready to use, right? Because you mentioned this, like, half-life. I'm talking about it third time during this webinar, but it's really short. So if we are mapping, I don't know, customer success specialists today, then the skills for the same people in the same role in the same company in 2 years, it will be different. Like there will be probably like, just maybe 60% of the skills will be common. So when you think about
can I jump in there? Because it's not just necessarily about the way that the skill develops. It could be something like the technology that's used for customer success teams completely changes. So, we're switching from using Salesforce to HubSpot in the marketing context or something like that. So this is also important to consider.
Exactly. So it's changing all the time. So you really need to have a tool that will support all of these changes and that will adapt with you, right? And remember that if we have like many different job positions, that think about remapping 300 job positions every three months. You can forget about it, right? So you need to really something that allows you to like keep it up to date without like restructuring or rebuilding it from scratch. And I would say that's the most important thing. So when considering any single tool for development, workforce planning, etc., think about the one metric that is the most important one. It's maintainability.
Sure. Nick, are we good here? Anything else to add, or should we move along?
No, I think everything was covered there.
Cool. We got there eventually. Okay, so let's go to our final poll here. And this one's on the topic of sort of outlook. So the question here is, which trend do you believe will most significantly impact internal mobility practices in your organization over the next 5 years? The options here are increased use of AI and machine learning, greater emphasis on remote and hybrid work arrangements, more focus on upskilling and reskilling, enhanced employee experience platforms, stronger data analytics capabilities. So if there's something that we may have missed here, you can also vote for other. And I can see some votes rolling through. So thank you everybody for voting. Once again, if you're on LinkedIn, fortunately you can't vote, but we'll share the poll results with you after this as well. And it looks like just about everybody has voted, and it looks pretty interesting, actually. Surprise. Let's go. End poll. Share the results. They should be live on your screen now. Which trend do you believe will most significantly impact internal mobility practice in your organization over the next 5 years? 50% of you voted for more focus on upskilling and reskilling. I think that could probably go hand in hand with the 30% of you that said increased use of AI and machine learning, because probably the upskilling and reskilling will be moving towards these areas. And 20% of you voted on stronger data analytics capabilities. And that's it. Yes. So thank you very much for the votes there. And I'll stop that poll. So it's off your screen now. And that brings us to our final question. And before we get into this, so just a quick reminder, if you do have any questions for our panelists that you'd like to ask them, you can fire them into our Q&A box. If for whatever reason you think of something after the webinar or in a few days' time, feel free to write to us at hello@devskiller.com. We'll be happy to answer any of your questions should it come up in the topic of internal mobility or something, or skills-based organizations. Any of these things, we've got plenty of material out there that we'd be happy to share with all of you today. But yes, let's come to the final question, and it's basically just to get your thoughts on the poll there, Nick. So I'll start with you. So what trends do you anticipate having the biggest impact on internal mobility moving forward?
Yeah, so I would say accelerated skill acquisition. I mentioned this earlier. So I think that skills will be acquired faster. Also, probably the skills will begin to deteriorate quicker. So it has been going this way for the past while now. So I think the half-life of skills, we talk about this a lot, but I think it will continue to get shorter as technology advances and so tools, they become relevant, become irrelevant again. Organizations will have to put in place some kind of internal mobility program, or else they'll begin to lose employees, right? Because if an employee wants to move to another role and there's no opportunity in their company, they're going to go somewhere else, right? So you'll have to do this, right? It will become imperative, I believe, for companies.
Yep. Thank you. Kuba, what about you? What's your thoughts on the
I
outlook here?
believe that it's basically everything is interconnected, because why we need reskilling? Because of this skill acquisition that Nick mentioned. Why? Because AI and automation is going into, and because of the AI automation data analysis, we are able to do that. So it's everything about that. But yeah, I believe that this half-life of the skills and skills acquisition,
fifth time
how
lucky.
the technology is changing, it's basically forcing us to do reskilling and upskilling. And basically without reskilling and upskilling, the gap that we'll have in a couple of years will be so giant that that's the problem. Right now, it's predicted that in, I believe, 2027, we will have a gap of 1 million people in the areas of AI, machine learning, etc. And it's a gap. So whatever we'll do, we'll still have a gap for 1 million people. So I believe that basically it's too late already to start reskilling and upskilling, but the longer we'll wait, the bigger the gap will be. So yeah, that's from me.
Yep. It looks like we were done for today's discussion. There's no Q&A questions, but as I mentioned, if you do have anything you'd like to ask us, feel free to write to us at hello@devskiller.com. We'll be happy to answer any of your questions. But considering there's nothing in there for today, I just would like to take this opportunity first and foremost to thank all of you for joining, both on Zoom and on LinkedIn. As I mentioned at the top, you will be receiving a link to the recording tomorrow, so keep an eye on that either in your inbox or in your LinkedIn inbox as well. And finally, I'd like to thank our panelists, Nick and Kuba. Thank you very much for your insights shared. And yeah, we will be back in a couple of weeks' time with our next webinar, so keep an eye on your inbox for an introduction, an invitation to that one. That topic is on talent retention. So hope to see you there. And otherwise, thank you once again and see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.